the beer with the ball still in it to even bigger cheers. How could you not? What do you think, John?
And you can't go back to the beer counter and say, hey, the ball splashed out half my beer. Can I get a refund?
No, I'm sure the ball was perfectly clean.
Good catch, Gabby.
Yeah, go for it. And she's got the beer. Fabulous. Thank you for joining us.
Outnumbered starts right now.
We begin with a Fox News alert. Breaking news. New details emerging about that highly anticipated Department of Justice internal watchdog report. ABC News is reporting the DOJ Inspector General Michael Horowitz has concluded that James Comey defied authority at times during his tenure as FBI director. It is breaking now. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend, Abby Huntsman. Host of Kennedy on Fox Business, Kennedy. Former deputy spokesperson for the State Department, Fox News analyst and host of Benson and Harf on the radio, Marie Harf. Joining us now in the center seat, former House Speaker and Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. Also the author of the new book, Trump's America, The Truth About Our Nation's Great Comeback. He is outnumbered, as we say. We have a lot to get to. This is breaking right now.
And I am definitely outnumbered.
Oh, no, never. Good to have you.
This new thing is amazing.
Yeah, let's get to it. Former FBI Director James Comey reportedly in hot water as we await the release of that DOJ Inspector General's report. It's been delayed. We've been reporting that. One source is telling ABC News the watchdog's draft explicitly uses the word insubordinate to describe Comey's behavior during his time as head of the FBI. The draft also reportedly criticizes former Attorney General Loretta Lynch over her handling of the Hillary Clinton email investigation. This is meaty. We knew that there'd be some fireworks with this IG report from what everybody was telling us. What's your first reaction?
Well, the first reaction is somebody inside Justice decided they would leak this, because I don't think it's gotten anywhere except in the Justice Department. And that means somebody inside Justice is really angry about the way it's being handled. And I think they decided they just started getting it out there.
Any sort of surprise reaction, par for the course with James Comey from you?
I don't know that I have any surprise about it. Look, I think that Comey was a terrible person who did terrible things. I think he did it in the Bush administration. I think he did it when he was head of the FBI. And I think that if McNabb gets immunity and testifies, that Comey will be in even worse shape. And I think both McNabb and Comey have enormous legal liabilities.
You mean Andrew McCabe, former deputy of the FBI?
Who was fired with 4 different charges of having broken the law. And so you have the top guy at the FBI fired, the number 2 guy at the FBI fired. This report apparently says the Attorney General was doing things that were wrong, which I believe means you're eventually going to get to Valerie Jarrett and Barack Obama.
Yeah. Okay, so that's where I want to go with you, Marie Harf. Yeah. So now you have, if you will, that line of command, which would reach all the way to the president, to the White House potentially.
Maybe. I mean, first of all, it's a draft report, so we have no idea if there are caveats. We have no idea the context, and we're all going to have to wait and read it together when it's finalized. But I think that I've always said about Jim Comey, he is by no means a perfect public servant. I think he has done damage to his reputation, and a lot of Democrats hate him too. That being said, some of the criticisms he has raised can also be true, so we have to sort of separate those out. When you just
like what? What are you talking about?
Well, I think some of his criticisms of President Trump, and I think the fact that President Trump fired him in part because of the Russia investigation, can still be problematic, even if Jim Comey wasn't perfect. But you asked about Barack Obama. We have no idea. I mean, we have no idea what Jim Comey was doing, or if he was talking to Barack Obama, or talking to anyone in the White House. I don't even know why you brought up Valerie Jarrett. She hasn't been a part of any of this. So I think we just have to take a deep breath and wait till we see the report before we jump to conclusions.
I want to give the speaker a chance to respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you do have the specific text message in which one of the FBI agents says to the other, the president personally wants to be kept briefed on all this. Second,
on the election meddling investigation.
On the investigation into the Trump campaign during the election. Second, you know, just the way the White House operated, the idea that Valerie Jarrett wouldn't be in the middle of this is inconceivable.
But you have no evidence she is. You're just throwing that out there. I have no idea if she was. Why would she have been talking to Jim Comey?
I want to get back to something else. I mean, what's interesting here is you've got the 3 essentially top players in justice and FBI turning on each other. Because Andrew McCabe, and think how liberally the FBI was handing out immunity during the Hillary Clinton investigation. Right. So Andrew McCabe assumes that he's going to receive the same sort of liberal outreach. I don't think he's going to. I don't think he needs to be immune from prosecution. But what he's saying is, I will gladly turn on Comey. Comey has said there's classified information about Loretta Lynch that showed that she directly meddled in the investigation. And Comey has also, he's tried to say that he and McCabe were best friends, but, perhaps he wasn't as honorable as people have thought. But, it'll be very interesting to see where we go from here. Because if you believe James Comey, and it's fine to do a reductio, you can go ahead and believe James Comey at his word when he says that Loretta Lynch was so compromised, he had to go rogue, he had to go out on his own, which contradicts his testimony that he believes in chain of command. Exactly. But if he really believed that means he couldn't go to the president. He couldn't go above her to, the chain of command above her, right, and appeal to the president and say, okay, she's doing something wrong. So he went out on his own.
So a person who would have leaked information about his conversations with the president to a friend whom he had employed at one point as head of the FBI as a special type of agent at the FBI. He leaks to that Columbia professor. That person, we're supposed to suspend belief about everything else, that he's telling the truth and not think that any of what you said happened. It's a stretch, perhaps, for some people politically. I want to get to this, though. The word insubordinate apparently is used by the Inspector General's report. And again, this is leaking. A lot of leaking.
A lot of leaking.
So we want to be able to see it, as Marie says, if we can, as unredacted as possible. Insubordinate, though, that's a serious word. That's not like that's not a little going rogue.
Yeah.
That's not a little, maybe he felt like he couldn't go directly to the president because his boss was in the way. That connotes that in this report, he did something wrong.
An insubordinate used for the head of the FBI. The irony of all of this is this goes against the man that he's been trying to portray that he is. James Comey's out on his book tour, and he's trying to be the example for these leaders coming up. In that interview with George Stephanopoulos, he said, I follow that chain of command. I take that very seriously, exactly to your point. Yeah. So this goes exactly against the person that he claims to be. The people that I feel for the most in all of this, the bigger picture here, is the morale at the FBI. Because you've got about, 35,000 employees. Many of them are there for the right reasons, and they take that job not to be political, but to serve this country. And you've got all of these guys at the top pointing fingers at one another. I think it's disgusting. I think it's really sad to see in this country.
Look, both as a historian and as a novelist, let me just suggest...
And a former speaker.
And a former speaker. Well, let me just suggest, if you have the number 2 person at the FBI guilty of something, you potentially turning on the number 1 person at the FBI, who, if you read the Rosenstein memo, was devastating, and which Trump should have released, frankly, before he fired him, because it was devastating. And really presages that what we're seeing today, because Rosenstein said we can never rebuild the morale at the FBI as long as this guy's still there. That's in the memo by Rosenstein. Then you have Comey saying, the head of the FBI, saying of his boss, the Attorney General, that she clearly has done things that are terribly wrong. And now I understand you want to suggest that the Obama administration was so sloppily run that you could have the Attorney General, the head of the FBI, and the number 2 person in the FBI all doing these things while at the White House they were totally ignorant. I think that is inconceivable.
We'll wait for some evidence and we'll see.
Well, but of course the Justice Department has done everything it can to avoid the evidence. So,
right.
so
or
they,
I want to interject this very quickly. Seeing that there might actually be accountability in a story that many in the media specifically said was completely closed, that there might be accountability is a very good thing, but it also shows this Inspector General so far has been pretty thorough, and maybe we don't need a second special counsel.
I was just thinking the same thing. And in fact, because we still have to see the TikTok and what he found out on the Hillary Clinton email investigation portion of it, which I know we're going to get to, waiting for this IG report, and with the delays that we learned about this week, I have had many Lawmakers on the Hill tell me it'll be worth the wait because it will answer some questions. And clearly it's answering questions that we might not have even known we wanted to ask.
It's very true.
Well, speaking of investigations, a group of Democratic lawmakers now requesting top DOJ and FBI officials confirm they did not give President Trump or anyone from his legal team access to the same classified information on the Russia probe that was briefed to congressional leaders last month. Democrats stating in a letter that the president's attorneys and congressional Republicans will ultimately attempt to use the information against the agency, adding, quote, "We thus respectfully request that the Department of Justice confirm that going forward, DOJ and FBI will not brief additional members of Congress who are not part of the Gang of Eight on these matters." We should note that House Oversight Chairman Trey Gowdy was the only lawmaker present at those classified DOJ briefings last month who was not a member of the bipartisan Gang of Eight. So, Mr. Speaker, this is part of this whole backdrop of the Russia investigation, this kerfuffle over who got to go to what briefings. I think the White House landed in a good place to brief the Gang of Eight, but then the White House sent an attorney for part of the meeting. They got some criticism for that. Do you think that criticism was warranted? Because that's what this letter is addressing in part now.
Oh, I think they probably would have been just as well off not to do it. But look at where we're at. We've had a year and a half of this. It's all sorts of stuff is kept either secret or it's redacted. This is an absurdity. I mean, you know, in Jerry Maguire, he says, "Show me the money." You know, my attitude as an American citizen is, after $17 million and all of these lawyers, show me the evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, don't tell me there's some magic secret hidden place. The whole point of the last election and the election of Donald Trump was the American people sending a signal they are sick of a Washington establishment operating in secret.
Also in Jerry Maguire, help me help you. Right. Help me help you. I mean, let me do what I can, you do what you can.
Right. Well, and Trey Gowdy came out of that meeting and basically said that he is now more convinced the FBI was proper in how they handled the investigation. Paul Ryan seems to agree with him. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
I think Chairman Gowdy's initial assessment is accurate. I think but we have some more digging to do. I want to make sure that we run every lead down and make sure we get final answers to these questions.
So, I'm going to make a point about this, because I was really surprised by Gowdy saying this.
Do you think he believes it, maybe?
Well, he may believe it, but Chairman Nunes has made the point. None of the documents have been exposed. I mean, you know, they come in, they give you this nice, pleasant briefing.
But they got access to documents in this briefing, and Kennedy, Trey Gowdy came out of it saying that he thinks the FBI behaved properly. And he is respected in these issues.
No, I understand, but the issue that the Democrats have is that Trey Gowdy was part of the briefing.
Right.
So it's like, what are they really upset about? I mean, it just seems like everyone is moving chess pieces just because, you know, they feel like they should be playing a game.
Right.
It's really obnoxious. And I agree with you completely, but I also agree for future administrations, regardless of party. Let's get used to releasing information. Let's get used to transparency in this government. Not just to protect the president or to protect our chances in the midterms, but to protect the rule of law and you know, civil liberties here. And those are violated when you have an opaque government and when you have a gross abuse of power, or whether it's political or otherwise. We need to see that thrown open immediately, so we stop. Because you know what happens when we abstract and you keep some things secret, but you show some others with redactions. It just keeps this broken system in place, and you know, for future generations of lawmakers, makes it okay for them to use these great tools for their own means.
Speaker, where does this end? Just quickly, we've got a minute here, but you were saying the American people, they want this to be done. They want to start focusing on the economy, things that impact their daily lives. How do you think this ends?
This? I think it just gets worse and worse. I think people finally stop and say, explain again why all of Hillary's accomplices were given immunity. Explain again why none of this stuff was ever carried out as a legal thing. And I think the more we're learning even today, the sicker the system looks. So that piece of it is just going to get worse, but it's going to get worse for the establishment, not for Donald Trump. I think on the other front, if we have very many more months where we're being told we're going to have 4.8% real growth, and yesterday's report, there are now more jobs available than there are people looking for work, I think those kind of things affect the American people.
But they aren't being talked about very much.
But the average American talks about that a lot more than they talk about Washington.
Well, in the next chapter, and that potentially could be the gap that you see between people looking for work and the jobs that are out there is that skill base. What happens if the skills start to catch up with those jobs? That's going to be like a headwind. First of all, it's beautiful for the people looking for jobs. I mean, but it's a headwind for Democrats in that sense. All right. So the president right now is about to make news in the Rose Garden. We're watching minute by minute on this, and everybody's assembled. So this looks like this may go off on time. The president is signing the Veterans Affairs Mission Act today, and it addresses a new VA health plan. Some of the reporting that's come in recent days was very critical of the health care program that's set aside for our veterans and military people who've served. So to shore that up, almost right on time on cue, you've got this happening today. We'll learn about that VA Mission Act, no doubt, as he signs that today. So we're watching for that live event to happen right there in the Rose Garden. Also, President Trump weighing in on a huge primary day, and the focus is on California. Democrats were facing the potential of being shut out of some of the critical races, in part because of how the people can vote for anybody they want there. It's called a jungle primary. One Republican secured a top spot in a very important contest. Live report ahead. Stay close. Breaking news. This is what we told you that we were watching before the commercial break there. And now we see the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, there on the dais with other veterans and members who've been invited today. The president is about to sign the VA Mission Act today in the Rose Garden that we're looking at right now. So we anticipate, with the vice president already out there, that the president will be joining him shortly. That's usually the tick-tock of all of these things. And people have been seated there for quite a while. So this was supposed to happen right about now. And as it comes together, I can tell you that new VA health plan that the president will be signing counters what has been critically written about just this week and last week, a choice program that doesn't seem to be working. But even with this choice program that the president would sign today, the other one will still be in place for another year while they roll that in. But this is a big deal. The veterans there, you know the story with the VA and how some had suffered on waiting lists and even died. This addresses people being able to have more of a choice after serving this nation. As it happens live and the president steps up, we'll go straight to it. Kennedy?
Very good. Here's a Fox News alert. President Trump declaring a, quote, great night for Republicans as we get results from primaries in 8 states. And that includes the big one, California, where President Trump threw his support behind a Republican businessman who has captured a top spot in a critical race there. A lot of focus right now on California, where Democrats were able to avoid getting shut out of some of those key congressional races by securing second-place finishes in every House race that they're targeting come November. And in the race for California governor, Republican businessman John Cox earning a chance to go up against Democratic Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom. President Trump threw his support behind Cox, who spoke earlier on America's Newsroom. Watch.
This state is wonderful, and we've got to change the regime in Sacramento, get the special interests out of power, and return this state to the great golden state it is.
Okay. Will that message resonate? This morning, President Trump tweeting, quote, great night for Republicans. Congratulations to John Cox on a really big number in California. He can win. Even fake news CNN said the Trump impact was really big, much bigger than they ever thought possible. So much for the big blue wave. It may be a big red wave, working hard. Peter Ducey, live from beautiful Del Mar, California.
That's nice.
There in the south, close to San Diego. What's going on, Peter?
Kennedy, even though Democratic candidates came in second place in some House districts they really want to flip to try to take back the House, that's good enough for now because they made it to the ballot, according to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, who just sent us this. As we await final results in multiple districts, it's clear the Democrats are in a stronger position than ever to take back the House, and winning districts in California will be central to that path. Turnout was relatively soft here yesterday, just 21.8% statewide, despite weeks of television ads blanketing the airwaves and campaign flyers clogging mailboxes up and down the West Coast. There was also a major primary day problem in L.A. County, where a printing issue left 118,000 voters' names off the rolls. The registrar tried to warn anybody whose name was missing to file a provisional ballot, but for anybody who didn't get the message by 8 last night, no way to cast a ballot now. As for the Senate primary, that's going to be between longtime Democratic incumbent Dianne Feinstein and the more liberal state senator Kevin De Leon, as the Democrat for governor Gavin Newsom is already signaling the anti-Trump tone his campaign is going to take.
We're a state where we don't criminalize diversity, we celebrate diversity. We invest in children, Jeff Sessions, invest in children where we don't tear them from the loving arms of their mothers and their fathers.
But now California voters who may actually like President Trump have a candidate for governor themselves, John Cox.
And it wasn't Donald Trump that passed the sanctuary state. Gavin, you did that. You're the one that's protecting MS-13. You're the one that's making our communities less safe.
So the Golden State did not take a really hard left turn or right turn in the primary last night. That means that now voters have a few more months to decide how they want California to be ruled for the next few years. Kennedy?
An interesting place. Beautiful day. Thanks so much, Peter. All right, so let's talk about this. Gavin Newsom obviously has some grand aspirations here. He has taken a pledge that he's not going to run for president in 2020, but he's certainly looking beyond the state house in Sacramento. How do you think this race is going to play out, and do Republicans stand a chance?
I think they have a chance, more chance than they've had in recent years, because the combination of the massive gas tax increase, gasoline in parts of California is now $5 a gallon. The 65% of Californians say that the state's too expensive in terms of cost of living. Newsom is running with a commitment to both raise the income tax and raise the property tax, and he's proposing to have a government-run health system, which will be wildly expensive. So I think if Cox can penetrate with a message just about the cost of being in California and that Newsom is the problem, and if he can take every Newsom attack on Trump and turn it back into a let's talk about California, Sure. I think this could become a much closer race.
I wouldn't get too excited about that one. Gavin Newsom, you were pointing this out, tweeted in response to Donald Trump's tweet about good night for California. He says, please come campaign for him, Donald Trump, as much as possible.
Well, let me step in, though, with Bill Hemmer's interview this morning with Mr. Cox. And I would just say this. He can do the things that you're talking about because we watched him do it live on Fox News this morning. I mean, he talked all about that spending and the legacy of that spending and the problems with that spending right now in the context of questions about sanctuary cities and all of that sort of thing. And he did that pivot from the criticism on the president that you're talking about. So I know it's one interview. It was the first one that I've seen of him live since, you know, kind of taking on Newsom. But it's interesting. I mean, Newsom is part of that apparatus in California that's very tough to beat. Well, so it will be interesting to see what Cox can do.
There are a lot of Democrats in this state. Gavin Newsom has already won a statewide race. He is the lieutenant governor. He's incredibly well known. He beat Antonio Villaraigosa, who should have been a formidable opponent. Antonio Villaraigosa outspent John Cox, and it didn't matter. He didn't even get half the votes that Cox got. So, you know, is it just a foregone conclusion for Newsom, or does he actually have to run closer to the middle to get some of those counties who don't like his San Francisco past or his support for things like the train to nowhere, the high-speed train that's not high speed and it does not connect LA with San Francisco?
I mean, California is a Democratic state. The headwinds against someone like the Republican candidate for governor are incredibly strong. And just from a numbers game, there are a lot of Democrats, and these are liberal Democrats in California. Now, what was interesting is...
In parts of California.
In parts of California. But what was interesting is Dianne Feinstein...
You also have a lot of military families.
Well, but what I was going to say is everyone was
want to
saying...
hear civility and
that's right.
practical addressing of issues.
Everyone was saying that Dianne Feinstein was going to have this serious challenge from this very, very liberal Democrat that ran against her, who got like 10% of the vote. So yes, California is liberal, but I actually do think there's a more moderate Democratic Party that still voted almost 50% for Dianne Feinstein that will help Newsom. There just aren't enough Republicans, especially if Cox aligns himself with Donald Trump, who is incredibly unpopular even among California Republicans.
Okay, but I will say this about Cox. If he actually can run the kind of campaign in the general that he's talking about, which is civil and it is issue-based, he can reach some of those more conservative Democrats, and there are a lot of independents in California.
People that don't want higher taxes, don't want to live in sanctuary cities. There are a number of them in California. I would really love for this fight to be competitive between Cox and Newsom. I think it would be just interesting for the country to watch. But I think the midterms, and Speaker, you can speak to this as well, it's going to be a lot about Donald Trump. You're going to have the Democrats, many of them running against him, and the Republicans wanting to side right with him, want him to visit their states.
And he wants to. I think Trump wants to play a big role in it.
Even Joe Manchin in West Virginia, I saw today, it's a very red state, and Donald Trump won that hands down. He's saying that he
I'm going to break in here. Excuse me, Abby, but the president has just walked out in the Rose Garden. We know he's getting ready to sign the Mission Act, the VA Mission Act of 2018, to give choice and a different health care option to our military veterans. As he steps up to the lectern, we will watch him live. Ahead of signing, we anticipate that he'll make remarks. And if that happens, of course, we'll be perched here to watch it.
So it's very important. Very happy. Thank you all for being here. This is truly a historic moment, historic time for our country. I'll be signing landmark legislation to provide health care choice. What a beautiful word that is, choice. And freedom to our amazing veterans. I want to welcome every veteran. We have many veterans here today. Every caregiver and service member who has joined us on this very momentous occasion. All during the campaign, I go out and say, why can't they just go see a doctor instead of standing online for weeks and weeks and weeks? Now they can go see a doctor. It's going to be great. You fulfilled your duty to our nation with tremendous loyalty and courage, and with the signing of this Veterans' Choice legislation, we take one more crucial step in fulfilling our duty to you. We're pleased to be joined today by our great Vice President, Mike Pence, along with my nominee to lead the VA, Robert Wilkie. Wherever Robert, stand up, Robert. We're going to do a great job. And working along with Robert is Acting VA Secretary Peter O'Rourke. So, Peter, thank you. Peter, where's Peter? That's a great team. I also want to thank some of our many leaders. I call them leaders because on this legislation they are indeed leaders. You know, they said that it would be very slow. It's political season. We have an election coming on November 6th. As I said, it would be very, very slow this period of time. And I was just telling Mike, you know, Mike, this hasn't been very slow. If you look, we passed Dodd-Frank, right to try. We just got $700 billion for our military. That's a big one. We needed to get that. The military is going to be stronger, bigger, better than it ever was before. Hopefully we won't have to use it very much. But the fact that we have it so strong means we probably won't have to use it as much. And I want to thank all of the great people in the audience that helped us so much. On December 22nd, which doesn't quite fit into the January 1st date, but on December 22nd, we signed the biggest tax cuts in the history of our country. That's a big one. And we got $1.6 billion. We've already started the wall on the southern border. The wall has started. $1.6 billion. So important. I also have to recognize some of the people that have worked so hard to make all of this happen. And Johnny Isaacson, you're here. Where's Johnny? Boy, has Johnny been working? Have you worked with Jerry Moran and the whole group? You and Jerry. Where's Jerry? Where's Jerry? Oh, hi, Jerry. Good job. Good job. Bill Cassidy, John Bozeman, Dean Heller, Tom Cotton, all here, Tom Tillis, Lindsey Graham. I see Lindsey sitting right up there. Hi, Lindsey. Good job. Todd Young. Todd, thank you. Joni Ernst. Where's Joni? Because I did you a good favor for the farmers yesterday, right? We love the farmers, right, Joni? Good, good. I'm glad it worked out. John Hoven, Steve Daines, all here. We have on the House of Representatives Mike Kaufman, Brian Mast, Jack Bergman, Buddy Carter. Did I introduce you, Senator? What's going on? Huh? I hope so. If I didn't introduce you, I'm in trouble. You know, the problem with this, there'll be 4 people that we didn't introduce, and they'll never speak to me for the rest of my life. They'll make sure I suffer, right? So please, I apologize. Jennifer Gonzalez-Colon. Peter King. Where's Peter? Oh, stand up, Peter. You have been so nice to me. Oh, he should. He comes from New York. I mean, he should. Right, Peter? Thank you, Peter. Jack Bergman. Our chair, Phil Rowe. Phil, what a great job. That was a lot tougher than we thought, right? You would think it would have been easy. It makes sense, but you would have thought. Kevin Kramer, Jim Banks, Andy Barr, Claudia Tenney, Martha McSally. I hear you're doing very well, Martha, wherever you may be. I hear Martha's doing very well in the great state of Arizona. That's what the word is. Don Bacon, Brad Wenstrup, Jason Lewis, Kathy McMorris Rogers, who's terrific. Kathy? Hi, Kathy. Representative Neil Dunn, Representative Elise Elton, Ann Custer, and Julia Brownlee. I want to just thank, and I assume we have a couple of others out there that, anybody I didn't announce? You want to stand? And we'll announce you. You deserve it. Thank you all very much. Really, it's incredible. And finally, I want to thank the fantastic veteran service organizations that helped us push today's choice legislation across the finish line. Whenever I spoke, this was one of the most important things, and it was something I got the biggest hand for. People want to take care of our great vets. They are our great people. 4 years ago, our entire nation was shocked and outraged by stories of the VA system plagued by neglect, abuse, fraud, and mistreatment of our veterans. And there was nothing they could do about it. They couldn't do anything about it. Good people that worked there, they couldn't take care of the bad people, meaning, you're fired, get the hell out of here. With us today are many brave veterans who endured that grave injustice, including Steve Cooper and Laura Villa. They served their country with honor only to be denied the medical treatment they desperately needed. To Steve and Laura, no one should suffer what you suffered. They suffered gravely. No one who defends our country in uniform should have to fight for their lives when they come back, when they come to their home. We commend your strength and courage in the face of hardship, and we pledge to act in your name and in the name of every other veteran who has been so badly wronged, neglected, and mistreated. To those who serve our nation, who risk life and limb for country, we must never be denied care, access, or treatment that they need. That is why we are here today, and that is why we are signing this most important bill. It made so much sense. It's been so long. They've been working on it for years and years and years, and it wouldn't happen. And accountability is the other one. As a candidate for president, I promise to make reforming the VA one of my absolute highest priorities. And from the first day of my administration, that is exactly what we've done. Last year, I signed the historic VA accountability legislation, meaning you now can immediately get rid of people that don't treat our veterans right that rob us or cheat us or aren't good to our great vets. You can get them out. You couldn't do it. For 40 years, they've been trying to pass this, Phil. You know that. 40 years. And they couldn't. It made so much sense. But it was hard. You have civil service. You have unions. Of course, they'd never do anything to stop anything. But they had a very great deal of power. And in the end, they came along. Everybody came along because they knew it was right. So we passed something that hasn't been that recognized, and yet I would put it almost in the class with choice. Almost in the class with choice. VA accountability passed. And now, if people don't do a great job, they can't work with our vets anymore. They're gone. So we're very proud of accountability. In the campaign, I also promised that we would fight for veterans' choice. And before I knew that much about it, it just seemed to be common sense. It seemed like if they're waiting online for 9 days and they can't see a doctor, why aren't they going outside to see a doctor and take care of themselves and we pay the bill? It's less expensive for us. It works out much better. And it's immediate care. And that's what we're doing. So we're allowing our veterans to get access to the best medical care available, whether it's at the VA or at a private provider. In a few moments, I will keep that promise that I've been making ever since the first day of my campaign. It seems like a long time ago. And I'm going to sign legislation that will make veterans' choice permanent. And I just can't stress the people here, the people in the audience, senators, congressmen, the great people working at the VA, and soon-to-be Secretary Wilkie, and everybody. The work that they've done to get this through is really inspirational to me. I've learned so much from the standpoint that I actually see how hard these people work. And this was very important. And Phil and Mike and everybody, I really appreciate what you've done. It's been incredible. It's been incredible. This has been for years, for 30, 40 years they've been trying to get this done. And they haven't been able to, and we got it done. If the VA can't meet the needs of a veteran in a timely manner, that veteran will have the right to go right outside to a private doctor. So simple, and yet so complex. This legislation also expands access to the caregiver program for seriously injured veterans. Because no matter where you served or when you fought, if you were in uniform, at some point, if you wore that uniform, then you deserve our absolute best, and that's what we're doing. Right? This bill speeds up the claims process, increases the health services, expands access to walk-in clinics, and fights opioid addiction. These are sweeping, historic changes. There's never been anything like this in the history of the VA. Never been anything close. And we will not rest until the job is fully done. My administration has also taken action to ensure veterans can seamlessly transition their medical records from the Department of Defense into the VA. And I've heard so many stories how difficult it is, almost impossible. I said, how is that possible? It was almost impossible to do. It would take years to do. We'll do it immediately now. We're set up. We have the right systems. After years and years of waiting, the two departments will now finally use the same system. They're matching. Today, we also mark another milestone, the 74th anniversary of D-Day, the Allied invasion of Normandy. On June 6, 1944, more than 70,000 brave young Americans charged out of landing craft, jumped out of airplanes, and stormed into hell. They gave their heart, their blood, and their very lives on those beaches to drive out the enemy and strike a lasting victory for our country and for freedom. In every generation, there have been heroes like them, patriots who answer the call to serve, who do whatever it takes, wherever and whenever We need them to defend America. They put everything on the line for us, and when they come home, we must do everything that we can possibly do for them, and that's what we're doing. And they can be very proud of their country because literally this week we have gotten the best financial numbers, the best economic numbers, the best numbers on unemployment and employment that we've ever had as a country. Strongest economy we've ever had. It's so good because we can do so many more things when that happens, including, of course, jobs. Among the best job numbers ever in the history of our country. African American unemployment, the lowest it's ever been in history. Hispanic unemployment, the lowest it's ever been in history. Women unemployment, lowest it's been in 21 years, and soon to be history. A little bit more, it's going to be history. Numbers that nobody's ever seen. We've added $7 trillion since the election, $7 trillion to our country's worth, our country's, the value. We've added $7 trillion to our country's worth. We've never had anything like this. And I'll tell you what, it's going to get better. Cutting regulations, cutting taxes. It's just starting. So it's now my great honor to sign the VA Mission Act, or as we all know it, the Choice Act, and to make veterans' choice the permanent law of our great country, and nobody deserves it more than our veterans. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, so the